Hi everyone, I'm Patricia Greenberg, the Fitness Gourmet. Welcome to Eat Well, Live Well, Age Well. Today my guest is Dr. John La Puma. Dr. John La Puma is also known as the ChefMD. ChefMD.com is his website. He is a very prolific author of The Real Age Diet, Refuel. I mean, his publications are numerous. Don't worry, John, I'll redo an introduction on that one. I flubbed because I wasn't looking at it. That's why I said radio's easier. But today we're going to talk about the blue zones. If you haven't heard about that, we're going to have Dr. John La Puma tell us all about that because we're talking today about lifestyles that increase longevity.
Well, Patricia, thank you. Great to be with you. As you know, Dan Buettner is the explorer, cyclist, wonderkind who worked for National Geographic in the 1990s and still does, and was commissioned to find the great centers of longevity all around the world. And he identified 5 then, and then later 9, what he calls power principles of how those communities live, of people who have great longevity and great quality of life. And it's one of 3 basic approaches to great longevity. The other 2 are our own work on real age, the way that you can make your identify the biologic age of your body as you've chosen to live. And the third actually has to do, I think, with culinary medicine and how you use food as medicine, which each of these 2 approaches do, but in different ways. So blue zones, as you know, are, let's see if we can remember them. They're the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, Sardinia. The only one in the United States is Loma Linda, California, home of many Seventh-day Adventists. Now I'm going to forget the other 2.
Okinawa, Japan?
Okinawa, Japan. And then there's one more in Crete, I think.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And each of these have not just a high concentration of centenarians, but have in common, not as simply as it seems, a plant-based diet, because in Sardinia, for example, there's a good deal of sheep's milk cheese and other sheep's milk yogurt and occasional sheep and occasional poultry. In Okinawa, there's fish, of course, as well as the long complement of seafoods, with rice being the staple of the diet. In Costa Rica, the Nicoya Peninsula is, of course, a peninsula, so they actually do lots of seafood, but a lot of local farming with beans and legumes is a central part of the diet. And in Loma Linda might be the most vegetarian and actually even vegan of the 5. And they make extensive use of soy foods and soy proteins in many different ways. There really isn't, I don't know if they even eat honey. Honey is a product, of course, of bees. But that would make them certainly vegan. So I think these kinds of principles that Buettner found, these 9 principles, including most famously the power of community, where he identifies Moai in Japan as a little group of friends that are often identified for you when you're young as a child, with whom you grow up during all of life, forming a support group and way to live. That Moai is your group of closest friends that might only be 3 or 4, or might be more than that, who are men and women often. He attributes the longevity of all of these communities principally to community. The Moai is just the Japanese term for it. He also attributes a term called ikigai, which is their purpose in life, as another central organizing principle for longevity in that group. where you wake up in the morning and you have something to do. You wake up with purpose. You are motivated by something outside of yourself and motivated to be something that is much larger than yourself. And those two things to me stand out among the Blue Zone principles. He also has what he calls a plant slant, that people basically eat plant-based diet, which I've described, and wine at 5, which is one of my favorite principles, where a glass of wine at 5 o'clock means that you really only work during the work hours. After 5, you have a beverage. And many of these, Loma Linda being an exception, there is an alcoholic beverage that's part of socialization. Time outside and gardening is actually something that each of these 5 communities share. And that might not be working in your own garden, it might be working in a community garden.
Okay.
And that's something that we can take advantage of in the cities in the United States, where we might have not space for our own gardens, but have a community garden in a block or in someone else's garden that produces it and shares it with other people. And that's what we actually do here in Santa Barbara. We have a little farm that we produce a lot of vegetables and fruits on, particularly fruit, and share them with both neighbors and with food banks and others. So, I really like Dan Buettner's brilliant approach to identifying blue zones and then taking those principles and applying them in 30 different cities in the United States who have applied to the blue zone group, which has partnered with WellPoint to try to improve the public health in each of these communities, making them more walkable, which is something that many in blue zone communities do every day, as well as working on having more accessible plant-based foods to people worldwide and reducing food insecurity rather.
Yeah, I have a question for you about that. I studied that myself a little bit, but there's something unique to the blue zones throughout the world that he went and studied, was that it wasn't so much done on purpose. Like they didn't say, okay, I'm going to look at my watch and I'm going to stop working and I'm going to go visit my friends and I'm going to go garden. It's just like a natural way of life. So I'd imagine the stress component is just not there. And it's a way of life rather than a forced, imposed way of trying to get healthy. And if you spend time in any of these areas, which I did spend time in southern Italy, and it was remarkable. I sat there, and your first response is like, what do these people do all day? Like, it seems like they're sitting, Italy and Sicily has this horrible rap that they don't do anything all day, right? But they really are the happiest people, and they have such longevity in their communities. Greece as well, where it's like you say, you wake up with purpose, but it's on a soul level. It's not something
exactly right.
that's
forced. The reason these people got to live to 100 is not because they made an appointment at the health club,
right,
to work out.
Right.
And it's because activity is part of daily living, as you've said. And actually much of that activity is walking, low impact, or gardening, also low impact. Right. Although you can actually burn calories doing both.
Yes.
As well as increasing muscle mass, and muscles, as you know, is where the insulin receptors are. And insulin resistance can cause diabetes, and you improve insulin sensitivity by getting more insulin receptors and getting stronger. And each of these activities does just that. But they do them because guys build their own walls, because they put in a garden themselves, because they lift not weights, but rocks or machines or laundry. And that can really, making your lifestyle your life is a powerful way to live. And that's how these people do it.
And caring for their own animals, right? That they raise their animals, and so some animals are, I guess, for companionship, some are for work, and some are for eating. But they just have a natural system and a natural order of how that works. So tell me about the how the relationships in these communities are different than how we know relationships in America.
In America, we are very individually oriented, individually focused. We see that now with people who don't want to wear masks, who feel
Right.
like it's a
Right.
forced patriarchy and a world order that infringes on their liberty. But the reason you wear a mask in the pandemic is not for you; it's to protect other people.
Right.
And that the kinds of sort of public health that we have are relatively few, but those that have been successful are ones that have often been enforced by law. Seatbelts are maybe the best known of these. Seatbelts have saved more lives than any doctor ever will. And it's required by law that you wear one, but it wasn't always the case.
Right.
And that was when there were more traffic fatalities because people were unrestrained in their vehicles. But now we take it as an automatic. You get in the car, you put on your seatbelt. We don't think about it as public health, but you are actually protecting other people as well. In these blue zone communities, the public health comes first. You care about people outside of yourself even more than you care about yourself, and care about their health even more than you care about your own. It doesn't mean you want to sacrifice yourself for
Right.
them. It just means that you are interested in how healthy they are as much as and in a default way. And so naturally, you would go over and share your vegetables. Naturally, you would help your neighbor with her fence. Naturally, you would bring meals to somebody who was sick, even if you didn't know them, if they were part of your community. Naturally, it is a natural order that you care about others as a primary thrust in life instead of simply caring about yourself or about your immediate family. It's a really different worldview. It's not worn on their sleeves, but it's integrated into the fabric of their community. And it is part of the reason that Buettner and much of the research has shown thinks that there is such great longevity and great happiness. Laughter is a great part of many of these communities as a kind of default mechanism. You see this among great spiritual leaders as well, like the Dalai Lama, who whenever I see him interviewed, he's laughing.
Right.
And he loves jokes and humor, and that is something that each of these communities also understand, that not taking themselves as seriously as we take ourselves is part of great longevity and great happiness. And it's also great mindfulness, great ability to appreciate the present moment.
Yeah, and we need to all embrace that a little bit more. It's interesting because when you travel and you see this and you marvel at, like, wow, these people aren't stressed out. They're relaxed, they're calm, and looking out for each other. I did have a question. I don't know if this was part of the research at all. Do people who live in the blue zones, the real traditional blue zones, not the ones that we're creating now, and I know there's a lot of effort to recreate this type of life, here in America in different communities, do they see doctors regularly? Do they have a cardiologist and a dermatologist and a podiatrist and go to the acupuncturist? Like, we're trying to get better care of ourselves, yet we're making more and more appointments to get help. So I'm wondering how that's managed in those communities.
Much of the medical care in those communities, with the exception of Loma Linda, which is more
the hospital, right? Mm-hmm.
Is more indigenous. In Sardinia, the community they went to in Sardinia is remote. It's in the mountains, and there is very few urban developments, period. Okinawa is an actual city as well, as like Loma Linda, that's well developed and has access to Western medical care, but it isn't the preferred form of medical care. I think people tend to rely much more on botanicals, on herbal infusions, on common sense, on time. And the fact is that they don't get a lot of the chronic illnesses that we have. They're not as, their rate of heart disease is lower, their rate of chronic inflammatory problems is lower, they fewer respiratory diseases, and that's how they achieve great longevity without relying on medical systems such as we have, Western medical systems. They use indigenous people, they use botanicals and herbs, they use food as medicine. They use a lot of ways of living as in balance with nature. And, you know, with Real Age, we took sort of an analytic approach. There are now 45 million people who have taken the Real Age test.
Oh, wow, wow, congratulations. Wow.
Contributed to with Mike Roizen, who founded it, and Mehmet Oz, who's championed it since. And realage.com, which is now through ShareCare, looks at 100 factors that can contribute to aging, your body's biological age as you've chosen to live, ranging from what you eat and how you exercise to medical data, including your blood pressure and cholesterol. So it tries to take factors, including behavioral ones, from many different realms and integrate them into a single number that gives you a sense of whether you're aging as your birthday age or aging more rapidly or less rapidly, and then create a personalized plan for you to follow to try to improve your real age should you want to. And so this kind of way is actually very, even though it's been taken all over the world and tens of millions in Europe, and actually it was a popular TV show in Europe about 15 years ago. It is nevertheless very American. It really likes the idea that you could boil this down to a number, that if you change this behavior, you get that result.
Right.
I mean, it sounds really logical to me. I like that. Why not do it, you know? But what the communities in the blue zones have found is that it isn't as simple as that. You may be able to change your cholesterol. In fact, you definitely can change your cholesterol with oats and berries and flax and nuts and eating less sugar and fewer refined foods and less saturated fat. Those are the quick ways you can drop anybody's cholesterol with that nearly, if with the right doses. But what you're controlling cholesterol for is to reduce your risk for heart disease. And how do you reduce your risk for heart disease? You reduce it with reducing your chronic stress and inflammatory level inside of your body. And how do you do that? You begin to integrate a more nature-based approach where you eat organic foods that are raised in a sustainable way. You make exercise part of your daily routine instead of just, you know, doing a marathon or doing running for a specific, or do cycling or Pilates. You learn mindfulness and you learn to appreciate the present moment. You certainly don't smoke. You drink alcohol with meals, and if you have a drink a week, drink a day, it's not 7 on Friday night. It's
right.
1 during the week, and so your lifestyle becomes more about health and cardiovascular health instead of just the simple thing of trying to focus and change your cholesterol. And that's what the blue zones prove, essentially, that there are people who have integrated many of these public health measures that we think about as public health, but they think about as personal.
Right. Because
that's what's integral to Okinawa and Sardinia and the Nicoyan Peninsula, and even Loma Linda, where there is a very sophisticated first-class university hospital, which I actually helped to design a template whole life garden for with the great architectural firm NBBJ, that has not been implemented, but we thought about these gardens as ways, and we're asked to design, present designs for these gardens as an immunity garden, a cardiovascular garden, and a pediatric garden.
Oh, which, how interesting. Wow.
But had plants that were active for each of those conditions and for children engaging, but serve primarily, as many hospital gardens do, as solace for hospital workers. It's the nurses that come out, the doctors that come out, the techs that come out, the janitorial staff that come out and feel at peace, let go a lot of the stress, let go a lot of the sympathetic nervous system activation that they've had, and instead be impacted by the phytoncides of the leaves, the little aromatic chemicals that change the brain in people as well as other trees respond to. Maybe improve their immunity with the natural killer cell response that we see in forests in Japan and other places. Certainly calm their brain and reduce their prefrontal cortical activity, and have less rumination about the craziness inside the hospital. And
what are the sleep habits that discovered with people who live in the blue zones?
It varies by individual. And I don't know that it can be generalized, except to say that people sleep. Let me start that again.
Okay.
I don't know that I can answer that very well.
Okay.
What's the right answer to it? I don't know.
Yeah. Because nobody in America can sleep anymore. I mean, everyone I talk to complains about their sleep. And let me stop a second here. So John, in closing, what are some of the lifestyle habits we can embrace that we learn from the blue zone and their way of life that seems to help people live longer and be happier?
Well, one of them is to sleep as much as your body needs. And take naps if you need to. That's what a lot of people in the blue zones do. They listen to their body. They don't go by alarms. They seem to know how much their body needs and then give it to them. And we don't really do that in America. A lot of people have trouble sleeping. They also just they have a sense of eating until they're full, but not too much.
Okay.
And it's kind of the 80% rule. Eat until you're full, but don't stuff yourself to 100%. And they consider community personal. They allow community to be as important to them as their individual health. And they seek ways to help others. And of course, you already know about the plant-based approach and having alcohol in moderation regularly. And regular alcohol is much safer than alcohol all at once. And really, I think it's a beverage to be enjoyed with meals.
Yeah, so that's a good recap. So you can get more information. Just go and look up Blue Zones. Dan Buettner is the author and sort of, I don't know if founder is the right word. He kind of coordinated this. He's an employee at National Geographic and put this together. You can also get your biological age versus your chronological age at realage.com.
Yes, that leads to share.
Right? Okay. And also, for more information, and if you want to send Dr. La Puma any questions or information or get some information about what he does, you can go to ChefMD.com and also email me at, get in touch with me at thefitnessgourmet.com, and I can steer you in the direction of any of these. But I did take the Real Age diet. Actually, I've taken it as long as I've known John. The first time I took it, I was 12 years younger than my age. The second time I took it, I was 9 years younger. And just recently, I was 6 years younger. So I want to go back and do a little work and see how I can get it back up to 9, 10, 11, or 12 years younger. So I'm still pleased with the results. So that's
you're great, and you want to be the youngest you can be.
Yes, absolutely. John, thanks a million as usual. And I hope to see you again soon. Stay well, stay healthy, and enjoy.
You too. Thanks.
Okay.